This is the Team Blaney Podcast.
We'd like to welcome Team 12 crew member Greg Sorber to the Team Blaney Podcast. Greg is a multi-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, a Daytona 500 winner, and he serves as the lead hauler driver for Ryan Blaney's number 12 Ford Mustang. Greg, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Appreciate it.
So you are another one in a series of interviews that we've been doing with members of the crew. We'd like to get everybody's backstory, talk about how they got into racing. You specifically have a really unique job in being a hauler driver. I know we've talked to one of Ryan's hauler drivers in the past, but it's always great to get a new perspective from somebody new as we go year to year. But first off, man, I read up a little bit about your backstory and, thinking about a hauler driver, a transport driver, we know that some kind of get into it because that's something that they're already doing. But Greg, you come from a racing background, and can you kind of talk about that, how you got into racing? And I understand it was kind of with a family team.
Yeah. We were, just graduated high school. Family, my cousin, uncle owned a car dealership that I was working at. And we were running NASCAR late models in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And which we're from Northeast Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, and doing really well. And some gentleman wandered into the car dealership one day and mentioned to my uncle, "Hey, NASCAR's starting this truck series where they're going to race pickup trucks. It's going to be the Craftsman Truck Series." Well, the next thing you knew, we were buying parts and pieces, and we bought an existing truck from Bobby Gerhart, who is an ARCA racing legend, who it wasn't his cup of tea. So we bought everything that he had in 1996, and I think we were at our first race in 97 at I-70 Speedway in Kansas. And I wasn't driving then, wasn't old enough to drive then. But my cousin told me, I always had a spot on the team, which was kind of, I got heckled for that a lot, because I was always you must be related. Well, I'm related, but I'm good at what I do too. But he told me that I was a good mechanic, but I just wasn't fast enough. I wasn't confident enough in my skill. And if I wanted to maintain a spot on the team, that I needed to find something else to do. So I already drove a car carrier for the family dealership. We transported a lot of cars. So doing that, once I was old enough to do it. And it's like, well, if I'm driving a truck now, I might as well drive the family hauler. So did that until we went cup racing. We bought, my uncle bought all the assets from Roger Penske of the old 77 Kodak car, the old Penske Cranifus racing. Yeah. And we brought all that equipment back to Pennsylvania. And in the process, I think my uncle told me it was our 75th year in the automotive sales business, by the race team almost bankrupting the car dealership. So he was going to Daytona to give it one last shot, and didn't work out, and he closed the doors. And him and my cousin offered me a chance to come back and work at the dealership. And it's like, man, we've been racing for almost 10 years now. I've met a lot of people. I know a lot of people. I really like this deal. And I said, I think I'm going to make a go of it on my own. And I left my wife and my kids at home, and I moved to Martinsville, Virginia. And I went to work for Jim Harris. I already had a hard card, so it was easy to go to races and put my resume out there with all these people. And I met Jim Harris's people at Dover Speedway, and they had a falling out with their driver. And the next thing you know, I was driving the number 59 hauler for Jim Harris's truck team. I think at the time was Terry Cook was driving it. Ended up with Ted Musgraves and Donnie Leah, and we were getting, then fast forward 2 more years, and we were getting ready to go to Daytona, and got a phone call from Penske. Matt Gimbel was the crew chief of the Busch Series program at the time. And he said, hey, he goes, you interested I have your resume here, which I had put my resume in all those years earlier when my family had bought all the equipment. When my cousin and my uncle bought all the equipment from Roger, I was down there for a month palletizing all the parts and pieces and hauling everything back and forth. And I had given my resume to the shop foreman. And I guess it sat on a pile for 2.5 years. And just by chance, the Busch Series crew chief picked it out and gave me a call. And I signed my letter of intent to go work for Penske the day before Ryan Newman won the 50th anniversary of the Daytona 500.
Wow.
And I've been there ever since.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference from, you had your family team, and especially in late models, had some success there. You saw a little success here and there in the truck series between the family team and the team you started driving the hauler for. But what is it like? And then you went into the Cup Series there, where the goal there was really start and park, which we're really familiar with. Ryan's dad, Dave, at the end of his career, was, I think, basically almost funding Ryan's early career by doing that for like Prism Motorsports and Tommy Baldwin to a little bit of an extent, and Phil Parsons and some other folks. So we're very familiar with that world. But you go from that, where the goal is just to get to the racetrack and pick up enough money to hopefully fund some of your other endeavors, to going to working at Team Penske, an elite team. Like, what was it, just a huge culture shock for you to go from one area to another?
Well, yeah, it was. I mean, start and park was never the intent of my uncle. Wasn't that wasn't the point. We didn't want to go that route. He had the right plan in mind, and I see a lot of people, a lot of young guys, a lot of these in the truck series and the Xfinity series now, that they try and go to every race. And I don't think that's what you need to do. I think you need to pick the races that you're going to run good at, put all your eggs in the basket and run good and be up front, be on TV. And that's what's going to land you the deal. The running 6 laps down and being in the way is going to do nothing but paint you in a bad light. But we did. We definitely had to bite the bullet and start and park when we did. But definitely I don't want to say culture shock, but the biggest change for me was, I was driving the hauler for my family, and even when I went to Jim Harris's place, I was still a mechanic.
Yep.
And I had mechanical duties as well as hauler duties. Well, when I got to Penske, that was not the case. My sole responsibility was the hauler, and that took some getting used to. I was constantly in the way because I was trying to help on the car. Got chastised for it a couple times, and it was really a difficult transition to go from being in it to, okay, I'll just take care of the truck. And then, that's when I entered my Mr. Clean phase. If my only responsibility is going to be the truck, I'm going to have the cleanest, nicest truck that I can. And, it was then, I started out with Sam Hornish, and I mean, it's not, we struggled, you know what I mean? But, and then from Sam Hornish, I went to Kurt Busch, and, that was its own animal. You ran good, but there was the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I mean,
yeah, he was a different person back then.
Kurt was, and still is, I talk to Kurt whenever I get a chance to see him, but greatest guy off of the racetrack. But once he puts that helmet on, something short circuits. But if you want a wheel man, he's your, he was your man. But he could definitely break some stuff in the truck if he wasn't happy. But but then it's weird because all the people that we like when we were with Sam, and we call my teammates that are still with me in different aspects now, those were the character building years, man. You were running 35th every week and wrecking stuff, and that's what makes you what you are. If you keep coming back for more and don't get down on yourself. I mean, I'm a 2-time series champion now. I mean, I could have packed up my toys and went home years ago, but and I all my teammates from that team, there's a lot that are still with me, just in different areas of the shop and different teams now, the 2 and the 12 or 2 and the 22, and yeah, it's crazy. It's like Jefferson said on that podcast, just when it seems like it can't get any worse, then something miraculous happens and changes the whole deal. So here we are.
Yeah. Speak to, when you talk about your time at Penske, like how you've progressed through the different teams at Penske too, because you have kind of like worked with different drivers and crew chiefs along the way, correct?
Yeah. When I first started, I started as a test team driver and Busch Series. And it was Sam. When Sam was in the 77, we also had him in a Busch car, and then it went to Justin Allgaier. Didn't spend much time on that. I mean, I spent more time testing, because back then we were testing. I lived at Kentucky. I swear I lived at Kentucky. We were there constantly. But did a couple races with Justin Allgaier in the Verizon car, and then I got moved. One of the drivers on the 77 had a falling out with the crew chief, and they just replaced him with me, and did that deal with Sam. And then was it 2011, I think we started with Kurt, and that was short-lived. And then it was AJ, and we all know how that ended. Then we got Sam back again for, till we found somebody, for a couple races. And we had Dave. Dave Blaney practiced our car in New Hampshire after that all happened. And I laugh at him all the time, because he got out of the car after practice. He goes, "Man, I wish Roger would let me race this car. I know he's not going to let me race." He goes, "But I wish he'd let me race this car."
That's great.
After, then it was Joey. And, we had success with Kurt, with the Shell Pennzoil people. But, once Joey came, he was looking for, he knew this was his last chance, being that it was his second chance.
Yeah.
And it might be his last chance, and Todd Gordon, the Todd Gordon years, they were really good. I mean, it was so nice to know that it didn't matter what racetrack you were going to, you were going to be competitive. And that was something I never had before, even with Kurt, because, Kurt, as nice of a guy as he is, there was just sometimes he would beat himself before he ever got the chance to let the car or the racetrack beat him. But knowing that you can go somewhere with Joey and anywhere, and we won with Joey at Daytona to Watkins Glen to Martinsville. I mean, we were competitive everywhere we went, and that made going to the racetrack fun, which was, I mean, broad picture, wide angle lens, you're racing, so it's supposed to be fun. but being competitive makes it a lot more fun. And then, of course, when they did the whole switcheroo in 2020, we ended up with Ryan, and again, kid's super fast, super fast. He and you know you're going to be fast when you go to the super speedways. He had his struggles, Richmond and places and road courses like that, but you could see him progressing there too, man. And it's just it's fun going to the racetrack still. I mean, hell, we sat in the pole this last weekend. I mean, it was good until it wasn't. But no,
Talk a little bit about that, kind of that abrupt change. So you win a Cup Championship with Joey, you win the Daytona 500, solid team, and Mr. Penske decides to shake things up. And we'd gotten used to Jeremy Bolins and that crew, being with Ryan all the way through from Xfinity all the way up. So we asked some other folks that the same question, like, was it a shock initially, and then you kind of realize you're not starting over because your whole team's basically going over, but it's this guy that we've had so much success with, this driver, and then suddenly, all right, Ryan's kind of the new kid in town, especially in the Cup Series, and here we are. We have to do it because this is what we've been asked to do.
Yeah, I mean, the jury's still out. I don't want to get hung on any of this stuff, but nobody really knows what happened there, to if it was RP or if RP's hand was forced to do something. It is what it is, but it went really rough for me. Rewind to championship weekend in Las Vegas after we won with Joey, and Roger comes up to me. He goes, how about we buy you a new trailer for winning the championship? And I was, great, sir. This is great. Thank you. Because at the time we were in an old piece. I mean, still a nice trailer, just it needed to be updated. Fast forward, the year that the trailer was being built was 2019, and we were going to debut it in 2020. So I never got a chance to use my trailer that I won. It got given to somebody else, but it is what it is. I showed my ass. I threw a fit, acted like a 2-year-old because somebody basically took my new toy away from me, but probably wasn't the shining spot on my resume, but I was mad. And yeah, well, it was you go through that whole range of emotion. Like, what did we do? Like, we didn't, we won a championship. 19 wasn't great, but we didn't have a terrible year.
Right.
It's like, what? Because not that you were, but it almost felt like you were being punished for something. Because we didn't know Ryan was going to be what he is now. We just knew that they were taking a championship team and sending it somewhere else. I guess we got comfortable. Shame on us, right? I mean, luckily we got to stay together as a team,
right?
But since then, since that, the team's slowly been, I don't want to say dismantled, but people have gone their separate ways. Pit crew guys, they're all still in the sport. Over the wall guys, and then the mechanics. Todd bowed out, which hurt because Todd's just a great guy, man. I ton of respect for Todd. First that was, and then Steve-O, our longest. He was part of the original. I don't want to say the longest, but there was a bunch of them that were part of the original 2 crew. You had Dave, Mule, tire guy, Stretch, they were all, and then I came in. But as we got switched to Ryan's team, they, Steve-O retired, and Stretch now is the car chief on Austin's car, and Mule and I are still together. But it just, I don't, you got to thinking, it's like, are they leaving for a reason? But we won a championship, so we got the last laugh.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you talked earlier about character building moments, and it's almost like that was one, and you had to go through it a couple times because Todd ends up retiring too, and then they bring Jonathan in as a replacement. But now looking back on that, you see where the heights that you've risen to with Ryan now. It has to be pretty fulfilling to know that eventually you guys put your head down, accepted the change, and went to work.
Yeah, it was shame on us again. We all just expected that Miles was going to be our crew chief because Miles was our lead engineer. And when they told us Jonathan was coming, I mean, Jonathan and I started right around the same time. We had at Penske, worked together before, just not in the roles that we are now. And, none of us, I wouldn't say had a problem with it. It was just, we were expecting something different. And, but no, Jonathan's been great. Jonathan's family comes from a trucking industry. So he has a lot of respect for what I do. And I, in return, have a lot of respect for what he does. So it's been a good deal.
Now, on a race weekend, a lot of, you do get the hauler there, but you do a lot more than just drive the hauler and drive the car to the track, correct? I mean, you do end up on the pit crew in some manner too, right? You do a lot of different duties. Yeah.
Yeah. My duties have been reduced a little bit as we speak. I had orthoscopic surgery on my left shoulder over the off season. Nothing that I injured. I think it was just an old man being old and wear and tear. And so I had to take a step back from handing in the second can on pit stops. I'll get back to that here in a few weeks as my therapy progresses. But I'm throwing rear hose for Zach and I still run fuel. I'm still the fuel jockey, but yeah, no, typical weekend, we're there 24 hours before the team gets there. We have the garage all set up, everything unloaded except for the car. Once the garage opens, and I have the truck set up the way it needs to be, I go right to the tire pile, and I assist Mule Dave in getting the tires in sets and getting everything ready for practice and stuff like that. And practices are different, especially in the condensed form that we have now, being the little 10-minute practices we have. I still do the fuel for practice because it's not a 100-pound can of fuel. It's only a 50-pound can of fuel. So I'm able to do that. So I'll still fuel the car, change tires, torque wheels during practice, whatever they need me to do. I've been doing it long enough. I can kind of stand back there at the back of the car and see where people need help. And that's my biggest thing. I try and have stuff ready for the guys and do stuff before they realize they need it done. And yeah, during the race, I am pit support behind the wall. And then once the checkered flag falls, usually an hour after, we're ready to hit the road again.
You mentioned, your duties right now are a little bit limited just for health reasons, but did things change at all for you from the pandemic, season to now? Like I understand they kind of reduced the number of crew members that could come to the track. Did you have to pick up any extra duties in that process from back when you said your main duty was just taking care of the hauler? Did you pick anything else up, 2020 and beyond?
Yeah, I the pandemic was the big change. Once they came out with the reduced roster numbers, you didn't have all that pit support. So everybody had to pick up extra duties. And that's when, I used to watch the race from the hauler. I would start preparing stuff for next week, during the race, and just get to watch it on TV. But once the pandemic hit, and we had less people at the racetrack, everybody had to step up and do a little bit more.
Now, obviously, you were super busy then, but you mentioned, growing up through the sport, you were a mechanic, you liked being hands-on. Did a part of you like the fact that you had an opportunity to be kind of more, in the trenches with the team instead of taking care of just the hauler stuff on its own?
Yeah. I mean, we're racers, you want to be involved. I mean, it was just, going back to my family's team, the racing was 5 p.m. to midnight. 9 to 5 we were selling used cars. So it was always crazy doing that, because and I see people, Xfinity teams and truck teams doing it now, and I know exactly how those guys feel and how tired they are and how disgusted they are. But no, it's being able to be an asset in more ways than just taking the truck and getting it there is always, it makes you feel good when that the guys have enough faith in you to say, hey, I need you to help me do this, because they know I can do it, because I've done it before.
You talk a little bit about your it's kind of like a game day mindset, and I've joked to Steve before, I've been down, on pit road to watch a few races multiple times, and I've talked to a few other guys on the crew, but I always said, Greg always looks a little intimidating to me, because you're a big, tall guy. You look like real serious about everything that's going on. I'm like he's one of the ones I haven't gone up to ask for a fist bump or something going on during a race. But you look locked in. You're like you're a presence. I feel like on pit road.
Yeah, guilty as charged. I do take it, and they my teammates on the other teams let me know about it all the time, that I take my job too seriously. But no, 6'4", 265. Yeah, I'm a big guy, but I'm a big teddy bear. If I can fly under the radar and nobody knows I've been there all weekend, I've done my job. I'm not real flashy. I let my work ethic and my equipment speak for me. But yeah, I do. I'm kind of smug faced at the racetrack. I don't make a lot of friends. I don't have a lot of friends, but the ones I do have, I take care of, and vice versa.
Now, you said you yourself are not flashy, and you brought this up a little bit earlier, but the haulers, the trailers that you guys are driving cross country are pretty iconic, across NASCAR, across IndyCar, across sports car. The chrome or stainless sides, you guys take a lot of pride into it. Do you feel like, as you're making these trips across the country, are NASCAR haulers kind of like the envy of the truck stops and in other spots, or does even that get annoying sometimes if people are coming up trying to take photos and ask you how to get into the sport, or how you can become a driver?
Well, yeah, everybody always asks, and it's part of it. I mean, being a kid growing up in northeastern Pennsylvania, and at the time, Penske Racing was in Reading, Pennsylvania. So the first, before I even knew what I was, the first race haulers I ever saw were Rogers IndyCar haulers. And then when I finally started in the truck series, we'd do double events at, say, Michigan. where the truck series would race with the Indy cars. And you walk into the garage and it looked like a damn truck show. I mean, the Penske IndyCar haulers, the hoods would be open, the doors would be open. They'd have red carpets and mirrors under the trucks, and it looked like a truck show. And I mean, and I was driving my family hauler to Daytona one year, and one of the Penske haulers was in a truck stop, and I could never, my family hauler, I had the damnedest time getting, nobody would want to wash my truck because we didn't race every race. You know, if I raced one race, it might be a month before I went to my next race. So nobody wanted to take my business because they didn't, you know, if they were washing my truck, they might miss out on one of their normal customers. So I was talking to this guy, one of the truck drivers, was Ryan Newman's truck. Jack was driving it, and I said, man, I said, I just want to be, I would be much happier if I know when I get to the racetrack, I could get my truck washed. But that, I don't have a problem getting my truck washed anymore.
No.
But she gets washed probably twice a week. But no, going, you know, the things that people don't realize is besides the driver, the actual, you know, Ryan Blaney race car driver, we are probably second behind fan interaction.
Yeah.
By all the people that we meet and interact with on the road from track to track. I mean, yeah, you get your silly questions. Most of the time they think you're hauling t-shirts and, oh, you got hats in there? Or, you know, it's like, no, the car's in there. No, it's not. Let me see it. Well, I can't let you see it. Well, you don't got it. I'm telling you, the car's up there, but I'm sorry, I can't let you in the trailer to see it. But yeah.
So we ask a lot of folks, you know, how to get into racing, how to get into NASCAR, and this is you know, your job's a little bit unique, and you did come up through racing. But would you recommend what you do to anybody out there that's already just, you know, driving a truck commercially, or do you think, you know, you really should kind of have that racing background to get into a position like yours?
I mean, having a racing background doesn't hurt. I mean, we're hiring right now. I mean, if anybody listening wants to go to the Team Penske website, you know, go to the careers heading on, and you could fill out an application online. I mean, I'll put it to you this way: my co-driver Tyler, you know, champion last year, didn't start the season with me. He didn't start until St. Louis weekend. His second trip was Sonoma, the longest trip of the year. And 6 months later, he was a Cup Series champion. But yeah, I mean, there's worse things to do. I mean, I'm guys that drive garbage trucks probably love driving a garbage truck, but I couldn't do it. It's the biggest misnomer is all we do is drive the truck. If you're going to try and get into the sport thinking that you're going to drive the truck to the racetrack and then stand around for 2 days and then get in the truck and drive again, just stay doing what you're doing. But if you have a good work ethic, self-motivated, and are willing to take a little direction, you know, I understand it's, you know, to get a young guy in there and train him is one thing, but, you know, the whole teach an old dog new tricks thing. I mean, you got to be able to learn the ropes. I mean, but no, I mean, it's a great, especially our place. It's a great place to work. You know, great atmosphere, good equipment, good people all around. I wouldn't hesitate to tell anybody to put in a resume.
One last maybe fun question for you, especially since just came off this race at Bristol Motor Speedway. And I have to imagine the dirt race there might have been the most challenging one, but what's the most challenging track to get the truck in and out of? Because especially the Bristol dirt videos from the last few years, watching you guys try to get out of the track was almost as entertaining as maybe watching the race. So what's the most challenging one to get that hauler in and out and parked?
Yeah, Bristol was intimidating in the beginning. I've done it so many times that I don't even think about it now, but like I let Tyler do it for the first time and he puckered up a little bit. I don't like Dover for the simple being you go in Bristol and you go down the banking and you're done. It's done and over with. At Dover, you go in and you travel the length to the back straightaway tilted like that. And you're just sitting there. And if traffic backs up, you're sitting there for 10, 15 minutes. And it's there. A lot of them are better than what they used to be.
Well, Greg, thanks for coming on and talking to us. We definitely appreciate hearing your story. And like I said, I was excited because just reading up on your backstory and being in racing, and we just love telling everybody, letting everybody know a little bit about you, and hopefully they've learned a little bit. You've learned a little bit about us, and hopefully we can talk to you again in the future.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Come up and give a fist bump.
Yep. Next time I will.
That's nice.
That was Greg Sorber, the Team 12's hauler driver for Ryan Blaney and his number 12 Ford Mustang on the NASCAR Cup Series circuit.
Thanks.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.